I used to wake up and feel like the universe is fundamentally evil. I had a lot of existential fear growing up and even towards my late teens and early 20s because existence itself seemed like something that happened without consent. Or it feels like you just get born into this dark world. You need to feel pain, you need to suffer. Evil people win, and if you try to be just, you get punished for it. So I had this very dark outlook on this world and on life overall, and translated into a lot of philosophizing to trying to rationalize some meaning into existence, and I wasn't capable of doing so. It's this typical question of why does God allow all of the suffering when he's supposedly all loving and all good? This is a huge argument that made me stop believing in God, when I started to enter my teens. Because I couldn't accept the ideas of war and suffering, just even conceptually. Like just thinking about what it means for us to kill each other on these global scales throughout all of history and all this brutality that we humans do to each other. There seemed something about it that is just so bad and so wrong that I couldn't fathom how to justify a world like this. And then when religious people always said that this is in the name of freedom or this is in the name of love of the love of God or whatever, I hated that. It seemed just so unbalanced. Like if I, in my mind back in the day, when I had to look at the world objectively and I looked at all of existence objectively and thought about the good and the bad, I argued that you should just push the button and eliminate everything. Because I couldn't wrap my head around a world where you could justify existing. Because how could an all-loving God allow for so much suffering? You know individually how much you can feel in pain, right? And you're just one person. And then think about 8 billion people in this time frame. And then think about the history of humanity. Then think about animals. Then think about the scale of the universe. And then it becomes very... there's no word to describe it really. The scale of experience in pain is just absolutely unsurmountable. And then you as an individual can lose your sanity by contemplating this and feeling it and connecting with it. But then also spirituality gives you the sense that you are all one and that everything is you in a sense. So then empathy becomes first like a logical reaction, like compassion. But if you really start to empathize, then it becomes maddening. You become mad because now you're not just suffering what is happening in your life, but you are exponentially multiplying it towards infinite scales, and this is not mentally healthy. So from an all-loving perspective, from like the highest perspective that you could possibly fathom as like God, the truth is that there can't be a difference between good and bad objectively, between a preference towards a healthy baby or a tortured baby. And saying this is extremely contentious. But what you can imagine is that if God is truly all-loving, then it needs to embrace reality equally. It needs to accept everything for how it is. Because the moment God would say, this is good, but this isn't, so this needs to exist, and this can't exist or shouldn't exist, the moment, a metaphorical God in the sense, the moment God would do such a thing, now he has created a fundamental division in reality. Now something shouldn't exist and something should exist. So it couldn't be all loving anymore. So from a selfless entity perspective, like if you're some giant selfless entity with all the power in the world, but you have no personal preference or sense of self, then you should create everything equally. So this points to a radical acceptance towards the nature of reality. And of course, for the individual who is in pain, it will always feel painful to be in pain. And as a dual being divided from the infinite, it is also reasonable to say that we don't want babies to suffer, or we don't want anybody to suffer for that matter. So there's this weird contradiction that people face when they start to awaken, or they start to inform themselves with non-duality, because how can it all be one, and at the same time it's me, and it's supposedly all loving, but then there's also so much death and destruction, and I'm supposed to be fine with it? A huge part of what it means to become at peace with yourself is to be fine with absolutely everything, even the most horrible experiences you can possibly imagine. And to even embrace these dark aspects of you. So the price of genuine freedom is the acceptance of all potentialities, including those that the ego deems as evil or undesirable. But everything that we perceive as evil, in matter of fact, is just our personal preferences as bound human beings. So then we see something like murder and we have to judge it as something that is inherently bad. But this is where morality gets so complicated, right? We can say, oh, you should never murder anybody. Murder is inherently bad. But then your country's at war and you're being attacked by another country. Should you not defend yourself? Or why can you eat animals? Why can we abort? Like there are a lot of gray zones now where suddenly this visceral reaction of, oh no, of course there's good and bad, of course there's evil and good, starts to become very murky. And there comes the idea of nihilism as a protection mechanism. Okay, nothing of it matters. There exists no evil. It's all meaningless. And to hold this contradiction is what's very difficult, because you know it's not really meaningless. You know that there's something like badness to experience, but it's not something that is fundamental. It is something that we co-create by being beings in a 3D world. We like to say that this world is an illusion and that spirituality is about deconstructing this illusion of reality. But it's not that all of reality is an illusion. If it were, then you wouldn't experience what you're experiencing. You would be able to walk through walls. So there are rules that keep it into place. But there's no arguing with reality when your head hits the pavement. Acceptance is not condemning those rules, to not further the cruelty by fighting against something that has actually no bad intention towards you. Like a tsunami or tornado hitting your house. There's no bad force behind this. There's just this interdependency that creates all possible forms of reality. Radical surrender to the nature of reality itself is what peace is like. And fear is ignorance for what is simply the case. A struggle against the inevitable, or in fact, a struggle against what is just present. When something hits us in life, like when we have a huge tragedy happening to us, what tends to happen is that our mind goes into denial. We start to not believe that what we are witnessing has actually happened. And then we might get stuck in this perpetuation of denial. And denial is such a huge topic that I might actually do an entire video about that. Because this is what we're doing all the time to remain in suffering. All suffering at the core is denial, because we are not accepting what is the case. The paradox of control lies by letting go, by not trying to control things anymore. You gain all the control of the world. Making reality do what you want to do can only happen by accepting what is the case. Then you also know how to move forward in life and what you should be doing in your specific situation. Desiring to control is resistance. And this then causes all of a sense of being stuck in life, being frustrated, and procrastinating, because we have this feeling that we need to control something that is unsatisfying. But by letting go of this desire to need to control something, we are not just being peaceful in the present, but we're actually stopping the denial. We're stopping the idea that we could even control anything in the first place. Before I continue, I want to inform you that I help people with this stuff, like with the release of existential pain and gaining clarity in life and finding a grounding sense of self in my 6-week program. And you can find it in the first link in the description. You can see my page there, and there you get informed about all sorts of stuff. A huge part of the release of this pain of existential fear and doubt always comes with the feeling of your emotions and the feeling of your experiences. There's the idea that you need to always accept in spirituality as moving on, as, oh, I'm feeling fear, I'm feeling uncomfortable, I can't forgive myself, I can't forgive this person. And then we have this idea that acceptance would mean to not think about it anymore or not feel it anymore. But it's pretty much the opposite. You need to go into the abyss voluntarily, to not imagine or be scared of what it's going to be like, but just notice how it is like right now and then feel it completely. The reason that acceptance is the only reasonable response is because you can't change the nature of experience. You can't change what it means to exist. The fighting is not reasonable. And from there, practical change becomes possible. Existential suffering is coming from a place of fundamental resistance towards what is. And freedom comes by fundamental realization of what is. Because reality is fundamentally free to be what it wants to be. There's nobody controlling anything, as everything is free to be itself. The universe is infinite, and you are a tiny, tiny speck of this infinity. But at the same time, you know how much even you as this tiny speck of infinity matters. How real it all feels. So imagining having to go through all of conscious experiences, through all of suffering of all the universe and all what exists, it is absolutely inconceivable and unnecessary. You as an individual human have enough burden to carry. You are the physical manifestation of what infinity is. It's like you are zero and infinity at the same time. And this then translates to all of the conditionings that you see in this moment and into your body. Reality is giving rise to something new every moment of your life. And focusing on the pain or the suffering is kind of like trying to constrict or force this flow of infinity into like a singular place. And it's this forcing into a singular place that feels like suffering. And I know that this conversation has been darker than my usual combos. And it might sound very silly what I'm going to say next. But you also kind of have to appreciate that all of this darkness is what gives rise to everything that we enjoy. And it's not very reasonable to put it on a like scale. But if wars wouldn't exist, well then movies the way we know them wouldn't exist. Video games the way we know them wouldn't exist. Mario couldn't jump on a Goomba and kill it. Because, yeah, death would just be too unacceptable of a concept. The world is being held together by this contrast and the interconnectivity of all possibilities. It feels absurd and it feels such a strange connection or justification. But it's not a justification. It's just an understanding of how much everything that is around you, everything that you consume, everything that you interact with, everything that you enjoy in your life, and everything that you don't enjoy, how all of this is deeply interconnected, and how the existence of one single thing sprawls out into the universe. To go back, I'm going to double down, to go back on the Mario and Goomba example, I just imagine the moment the universe conceived of death is the exact same moment that the concept of Mario killing a Goomba also got born. Because they're interconnected and interdependent. So you can't take the darkness away at one place and then expect everything to remain the same. You can't be scared of all of the darkness in life and then expect to also be able to enjoy all of the beauty. It's the darkness that makes the beauty possible, at least the beauty that we know in this 3D human world. So embrace the darkness that is within you, and in this way you will also embrace the light.